have to like we don't have to dedicate an entire segment for Rublev.
Sure. I mean, I don't mind either way. I honestly kind of enjoy talking about how I don't think he's that good.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say you can just talk about how you think he's not. He's kind of plateaued in his level.
He's really plateaued, yeah. But anyway, take it away.
Sure,
intro
sure.
master.
How long do you think you have?
About half an hour.
Sounds good.
I could go 40 minutes probably.
All right, cool. So let's do it. Hey friends, welcome to the Tennis and Bagels podcast. My name is Andre, and I'm here with Owen today. We're gonna chat about tennis. It's been a while. I was supposed to be here last episode, but he actually ended up doing it with Vansh about Del Potro, who seemingly retired. Hopefully not, but also best of luck for him, like in whatever he decides to do. How are you doing, Owen?
I'm doing well. It's funny you should bring up Del Potro because the piece of like Del Potro fiction you wrote for Popcorn Tennis was one of the coolest things I've ever read.
Oh, thank you.
And if you haven't read that, you should go check that out. It's a fantastic piece of writing. But it's good to be here. Yeah, there's been a lot of tennis recently. I've kind of been suffering from that usual burnout after the Australian Open. But I've watched some of it. It's been exciting. So yeah.
Yeah. The only reason why I haven't suffered all that much is because Felix was playing and he did really well. So
Right.
So that's something that is exciting for me to follow. But other than that, I'm just kind of other the rankings and stuff. I just found out the Medvedev could overtake Djokovic, and it doesn't make me more excited to watch Dubai. It's just a thing that could happen.
Yeah.
I am just patiently waiting for Indian Wells in Miami, and mostly actually just patiently waiting for the clay court season, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, so I was talking about this on Twitter yesterday, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. I hadn't thought about it that much, but like, why are Indian Wells in Miami on hard court, or like, why do they exist at all? Because the main hard court event has happened. It's the Australian Open.
Yeah.
The next major isn't until the French Open, which is on clay. So why are we having more big hard court events in that interim? It makes no sense to me. It's kind of the same thing with like after Wimbledon, there are some little clay court events. I'm like, what is the point of these? Like, what are they preparing anyone for?
I don't know. Like my only thoughts about those, well, the tournaments that are small, like the 250s on clay, it's just that it's a reason for players to like get a title and get some play on, just kind of. Because at that point of the year, I guess if you didn't do extremely well, like you're probably not going to be doing all that well, like until the end of the year. So I feel like it's going to just be a good time for players to just like, you know what, I'm probably just here. Let's try my luck on 250s.
No, I mean, it definitely makes sense to me why players would play them. I'm just more questioning why they exist in the first place or exist
for sure.
This form. I mean, I know you have Larry Ellison, who's very rich, but like, why is it not structured perfectly?
I know. Yeah.
Like, I would be fine if there were like a long break and then just start with like Monte Carlo or something, or just have like 250s on clay until Monte Carlo. I don't know. That's my mini rant. But I was thinking about that recently.
Yeah. Would you imagine if it just had like a mid-season break? It's just kind of like a month with no tennis and that's it. And then I feel like players would some of the players would probably be happy because they would just be like, I'm just gonna rest until clay court season. Because honestly, like after when clay court season starts, that's basically the bulk of like tennis, because it's like rolling out like clay courts and Wimbledon, and then like immediately have like Cincinnati and Montreal or Canada, and then the US Open. There's like a long stretch of a lot of tennis to be played.
It really is. When I talk about the calendar to my friends who don't really follow tennis, I'm like, yeah, so you have the off season, and then you have one major in January and February, and then you have like a 5-month break. And then you have like 3 more majors all in a space of 2 months. And they go, wow, that's a lot. Like, yeah, they should probably be spread out more. But, you know, the tennis calendar is weird, and we put up with it anyway because we love this amazing and horrifically run sport. So,
yeah, it's very oddly run for 2022. I feel like I'm not saying that they missed the boat to like organize it better, but like they're definitely sluggishly slow to actually like take care of organizing this better, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like since I've become a tennis fan, it's like there's something new that's weird every year that I notice. Like I don't know. I mean, this year I'll probably complain about, you know, the year-end finals again. That should probably, what you were saying about having a month off in the middle of the year, like totally have that. And if you pay the players like a salary during that, then you have a perfect system.
Yeah.
But you should really have the year-end finals after a break.
Oh
that
yeah,
would, that would make it so much better for everyone involved.
Yeah, especially because like the end finals are right after a Masters 1000 event, which is the most insane thing that you could have possibly asked for.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that like they're so soon after the US Open kind of makes me think, why does anyone care about this? Sort of like within that Indian Wells Miami thing, like the main event has happened, like it's over. Everything else until the next major just seems kind of like icing or gravy. And not that they aren't big titles, but because they are, but it feels like they're trying to pretend to be something more, and I just don't really buy that.
Well, they both claim to be the fifth major, right? So
yeah, exactly. I'm like, what fifth major? There is no fifth major. You're worth exactly as much as all the other Masters 1000s in the case of Indian Wells,
including Monte Carlo, who has a third of the draw size of
Indian Wells, and is like not mandatory, even though it's also 1,000 points. I mean, it's stuff like this that is just bizarre. But I mean, I think we had a podcast last year where we just kind of ranted about the calendar for an hour and a half. And that was fun. But we should probably talk about tennis that's happened.
Yes, things happen, and new old problems, new prospects coming into it. Carlos Alcaraz has won a 500 ATP event, and so did Felix, who not only did win a 500 event, but he also won his first 2 weeks ago by now. But he backed it up really nicely with final right after, to which he lost to Rublev, Owen's most exciting player in his book, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I want to say, first of all, I have nothing against Rublev. I just think his ceiling is lower than a lot of other players.
Yeah, he's just maximized his game to be able to win a lot of the matches that he should win.
Yeah. I mean, I was impressed with how he beat Felix, because he served for it, got broken, and then Felix went on a run and had a set point, and things felt tenuous at that point. But then Rublev saved it. He had a backhand down the line, right onto the baseline, very clutch, and then won the tiebreak, I think.
He did a tiebreaker. I think it was 7-5 or 7-4.
Okay, yeah, but it felt pretty convincing. And I mean, the thing that made me happiest about that was like, usually when he wins a match, he looks relieved, or he looks kind of passionate is the wrong word, maybe elated, but he doesn't look happy. It almost looks like he feels like he's done his job, but he doesn't look that happy about it. He just looks relieved, and like the tension is gone. And after this one, he smiled and he looked really happy. And so I was very glad for him about that, because I think he sort of searches for his purpose on court, maybe more than most players. And it felt like he found it a little bit, which was nice. And I wish him the best for the season. I just don't know if he's going to get it.
Yeah, I feel like most of the problems that existed with the Rublev are still there. So like it's not necessarily a player who has a massive plan B. He doesn't hit necessarily like many angles. He isn't particularly good at the net, so he doesn't have necessarily a lot of variety. You know it's coming from him all the time. And his second serves are point starter at best. Like he puts the ball in, he doesn't double fault that much, but if you keep winning 30% of your second serves, it's just as good as double faulting like a lot of the time, right? So
it really is, and that's kind of an underrated point. Like if your second serve is getting consistently pummeled, it's almost better to double fault, because then you're losing the point on your own terms. But I mean, I'm kind of beating this point into the ground, because all this stuff has been said about Rublev. But what I was thinking about recently when I wrote about him was like, issues with his game aside, I feel like he hasn't improved that much over the past few years. Like he hasn't had that many breakthrough wins. Last year, he had a win over Nadal on clay, and then a win over Medvedev on hard court, which was amazing. He played great in both cases. But I feel like besides that was sort of it. He hasn't done great at the majors. Still yet to make a semifinal. And so I feel like until he gets that big win, he's just kind of in this limbo. Like I'm always impressed when he wins a tournament, but like he's won 500s before. I didn't learn anything new about him from this.
I think it's the fact that like he beat Medvedev and he beat Nadal, but like it's not like it never happens, right? Like, and it's not like Rublev beat them and you saw it coming. Like he was, it's kind of like the losses that happen when, for example, Nadal loses to a top 20 player, right? So I mean, it's going to happen at a point or another. Doesn't have a perfect record against them, so it doesn't never really put myself in a position that I saw that Rublev was better than them. It just felt like on that day his shots went in more than the other guys, and there wasn't necessarily anything different on his game that made that win possible. It was just a good day, I guess, like at the office, and that's pretty much my feelings about it. And to be perfectly honest, if Felix was slightly more like less fatigued, I think the match was pretty much his. Like seriously, like you can see that. I feel like Felix didn't play to his standard on that final, and he kind of, his level started just like dimming a bit, like towards the middle of that week. He did extremely well to get to the final. He played extremely well against Sapulin. It was a really good match, I find. He weathered the Russian really well. Like he was really putting a lot of ball backs and like making the job really tough for Felix. But he also didn't serve his best in the final. He barely put like first serves in. I think he was at 40% like in the first set.
Oh wow.
So that was not very good for his own standards. Kept missing like easy forehands, especially on the second serve, which he would have made. So yeah, I think his level wasn't as great, which kind of just leads me to believe that one, that's definitely a new chapter of his life. Like making 2 titles in a row is not easy, not just because you need to be winning, but because you need to be fresh. You need to weather your own body for it. But also, yeah, I guess it's really just like the fatigue of it. Like it was just probably wasn't ready to feel that pain and just like the body not moving exactly as he should at that moment. So
yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think that loss is kind of painless for Felix because he had already gotten his title and he had beaten Rublev the previous week and he was tired. So like I don't feel like we need to necessarily read into it a lot. I was so impressed with how composed a final he played against Tsitsipas. It was ridiculous. He destroyed him. I mean, I think he's really ready to make it jump. And I think amazingly that loss to Medvedev at the Australian Open so far is kind of working in his favor, because I think in the first place that was a good loss because he got really close to winning, but he also didn't really have a chance to win that tournament. So he can imagine what if, but like not enough to sort of torture himself over it. Whereas that Medvedev lost to Nadal, the title was right there. So that one is probably going to be a little harder to deal with. But Felix kind of learned that he could play at that level while simultaneously maybe not missing out on that much. Now that finals record is off his back, and he's been playing at a really consistently high level. So I'm excited for him. And I wasn't always. Like I think after the US Open in like 2020, when Team destroyed him, I was thinking it's going to be quite a while before he starts to level off significantly, at least. And I think he's making that jump now. So yeah, it's been a great stretch for him. And I do want to stress again, like I was impressed that Rublev beat him, because even though Felix wasn't maybe completely physically fresh in that final, things did get really, really tight and pretty good quality at the end of the second set. And Rublev was able to hold him off. And I was just thinking about it, and I feel like in a way, Rublev is almost like the anti-Yelena Ostapenko, because he has like a lower ceiling, but he's pretty consistent. Whereas Ostapenko has as high a ceiling as anyone, and it's just like either she beats herself or she doesn't, with few exceptions, because what Ostapenko did last week was completely absurd.
I was just looking at I was watching a few highlights because I didn't get a chance to watch the matches, but just the shot selection from her is like not something that you just, as a coach, I think you would tell the player you should do that, because all of them were very close to the lines and she was picking her spots beautifully, but you can see that like an inch away, like he was going to be an enforced error for a lot of those shots. And she was taking the ball really early. So it's like, it's the type of week that she was on, and it's, to her credit, it's obviously something that she has in her toolkit, like to be able to play those shots and to be able to play consistently. Maybe She could have, maybe she can like maybe adjust her game a little bit, like in the sense of like trying to be more controlled aggression, but it worked right for her in this
Yeah.
week, and she did win the tournament, and she destroyed a lot of opponents, Halep included, whom I think, by the way, didn't play quite as well. Maybe Ostapenko was right. Maybe she was saying just, well, I need to play my A game, otherwise she's gonna get into this match.
Mhm.
And there's probably troubled Halep, but I think Halep kind of tried to play too safely too many times and kept like rolling forehand that were just landing high and slightly short and centered. And I feel like instead of breaking rhythm, I think it just gave Ostapenko rhythm, because she likes to create pace.
Yeah.
She's not feeding off pace. She's
Right.
the one who's making it.
I was totally fascinated by that dynamic, actually, and I'm kind of going to disagree, because I didn't think Halep could have done that much. Like, she is an offensive player, but she doesn't have easy power. So when she plays someone who does have easy power, it's really difficult for her to do anything except defend, really. Because like when the rally is neutral, either if Halep doesn't hit like a really offensive shot off the first ball, she's going to be behind in the rally. Like Ostapenko had so much more weight on her shots. And so I was watching that match, and it was like, I mean, maybe once Halep could put the ball back with interest, but it was so difficult for her, because those Ostapenko shots will push you behind the baseline so quickly. And Halep, not the hardest hitting player to begin with, is going to have even more trouble creating pace from that far back. And so even when Ostapenko was totally off the boil and Halep won the first set 6-2, the match felt tenuous to me. Like, I was like, this is going Halep's way, but if Ostapenko becomes more accurate, this could get away from her really fast. And that's what ended up happening. I mean, and what Ostapenko said in press about Halep not being able to handle her pace, it's harsh, but it's completely true. Like, when Ostapenko is landing those shots, Halep cannot do anything. Like, she can't, again, like maybe once she'll be able to make enough crazy defensive gets that Ostapenko will miss. But if Ostapenko is being accurate, like, Halep is just going to get blown off the court. She hit 3 winners from the baseline in this match, and I think Ostapenko hit 20 or 30. It's such a massive discrepancy. I mean, and you can see it in the score as well. Like, in the tiebreak, Ostapenko won 7-0.
Yeah.
And then she won the third set 6-0. And it didn't feel that surprising. Like, when she makes those shots, there is basically nothing a player like Halep can do.
Yeah.
And that's saying something, because she's former world number 1, 2-time major champion. But at the same time, Ostapenko was wild. Like, she's not going to be accurate that often. And when she's missing, like, you can't win when you're donating 2 or 3 points to your opponent every game. And so it's for that reason that I'm kind of more confident in like Rublev winning another title like this than I am for Ostapenko. And on the flip side of that, I would be more confident in Ostapenko like winning a major this year than I would be for Rublev, because her peak level can do anything. It's just really hard for her to reach.
Yeah, I think kind of, well, obviously have to agree with you, because like I watched the highlights, which is 9 minutes compared to, I don't know how long the match was, but the only issue that I find is like, to Halep's defense, she has never been a great server, but like her second serve just kept getting destroyed. It was the same pattern over and over again, like backhand or forehand. Ostapenko was just taking it very early, and it was just no coming back from that. Like, at some point, Halep even stopped moving to the ball, because like, what am I going to do?
Like, what's the point? You'll I mean, and it's kind of like what you were saying with some of the shots Ostapenko hits are outrageous. I mean, the fact that there is basically no margin in her game means that when she's being accurate, she'll hit the craziest shots. She'll hit like a backhand cross court on the rise winner that'll like paint the sideline, and she won't even react. Like, this is what she expects from herself. And I always think that would be the most intimidating thing, to be on the other side of the court. She hits the shot that most players can only dream of hitting, and then she kind of just shakes her head and goes to the next point. It's wild. Like, I mean, we talk a lot about players making something look easy. She makes power look easy. And it is not. And I mean, I completely agree with what you said earlier. If she just put a tiny bit more margin in her game, so that it would be like 90% outrageous shots and like 10% margin instead of 100-0, things would probably work a bit better. But
Yeah.
I don't think that's in her nature. It's kind of the same way that, like, when I watch Andy Murray now, it hurts me because he's so passive. And I'm like, man, this is not working. Your body
Yeah.
can't handle it. You don't want to be playing 3-hour matches. You need to attack, but he can't because this is what he's always done.
Yeah.
And years of habit are extremely hard to break, even more so if you're a professional athlete. And mindset is everything. And I think that's kind of a similar thing with Ostapenko. Like, her mindset is attack all the time, and hit with little enough margin that if it goes in, your opponent is screwed. And so when she does it well, it's amazing and it works. It's just really hard to do consistently.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess I agree. Like, in the sense that Ostapenko has such, which she has already won the major, so we can have reason to believe that she could potentially do it again. Like, we know that her level is really high when she's on. And yeah, I guess back to Rublev. I guess he's got a lot of margin. He can produce outrageous shots, but also, I don't know. I feel like Rublev has. We talked about, like, just right before we started recording, that I think just Rublev kind of plateaued, like, in what he can do, and if he stays in the top 10, like 7, 8 in the world, I think he's been as high as number 5.
Yeah, he was 5 earlier this year.
Yeah.
And it felt weird to me because he hadn't made a major semifinal,
Yeah.
which is a bit of an ironic thing to say because the semis are top 4. So there's nothing wrong with him being 5th, but it just felt a bit weird to me. And I totally agree with you. And it's a tough position to be in because, like, the top players in this era have sort of defined it by improving constantly. I mean, you had Federer at the top, and then you had Nadal, who was second for a while, and then finally Nadal improved enough that he passed Federer, and then Djokovic improved enough to beat them both. And then alternately, they kind of had to improve enough to, like, beat Djokovic here and there, and then Djokovic would improve again, and he'd be number 1 again. And it's all back and forth, but at one point or another, for all 3 of them, their best was not enough to be at world number 1, and they had to change. And I think that's one of the toughest things to do. Like, we talked about it with Ostapenko and Murray. Like, when you play a certain way for years and years and years, one of the hardest things to do is be introspective and be like, okay, I am not good enough the way I'm doing this. I need to change. And that's so hard when probably from birth, basically, you've been coached to believe that your best is good enough. So when it isn't, I think that must be an incredibly hard thing to reckon with.
Yeah.
And Rublev's best is not good enough to beat the top guys. He needs to add a layer to his game. And when you say it, it sounds so simple, but it's an incredibly hard thing.
Yeah, I mean, just look at how long it took Djokovic and Nadal to, like, get comfortable at the net to play games.
Yeah,
and Federer, how long did it take him to actually, like, use his backhand, like, more aggressively, right? It took him changing a racket at 35 to actually start, like, driving the backhand, like,
and it's like a decade and a half of, like, getting killed by Djokovic and Nadal on that side. Yeah. I mean, you're completely right. Like, if you look at clips from, like, 2006, Djokovic and Nadal were, like, atrocious volleyers. Federer basically didn't have a drive backhand. He had a slice and that's it. And it's kind of insane what they've done to become different players. It's sort of mind-boggling to me how they were able to change that much and that noticeably. And I'm not expecting that level of change from Rublev or anyone, because that sort of thing is just not normal. But I think that mindset is what is required of him. Like, I can see him staying in the top 10 for a long time, like, indefinitely, really, because he didn't do great at the majors last year. So I think he'll pick up points. He can pick up points by making 4th round quarterfinals, and he should be able to stay in the top 10. But I think to make a jump from where he is now, something has to change, because the top players are not going to beat themselves, and you have people like Alcaraz coming up.
Yeah.
So I don't think the top few players are going to have, like, a noticeable dip in quality anytime soon.
Yeah, and now that we mentioned Alcaraz, and I think I was just talking about, like, Felix, who's also pretty young, like, is 21, turning 22 this year. Alcaraz is 18, which is 18. Mad. Yeah. It's a very good prospect that, like, those guys are starting to do well. And because Felix has been the face of steady progress since he's entered the tour, it's almost like fitting that he'd win his title this year. It's like his curve hasn't really decreased. It just keeps going up very steadily. It's not incredibly fast. It doesn't make like a huge change here and there, but like it seems like he keeps progressing, and it's good to see that his ceiling is still very high and just needs to be a little bit more consistent, and he's achieving that. And on the other hand, like Alcaraz, who seems to have figured out that he's a very, very, very good player, and he just kind of decided to keep being a very, very good player. And he, at 18 years old, already made better decisions. So like he's very fit, as we can see, and especially because now he wears sleeveless shirts, and it's very easy to see that he worked out really a lot during the off season. And he's also added drop shots
comparisons.
Yeah, exactly. And he added the drop shots to his game, which are scary.
Yeah, I mean, I was just laughing because it's unbelievable to me how good this guy is at such a young age. Like the maturity in his game. Besides, I mean, I think sometimes he pulls the trigger way too early.
Yeah.
And he doesn't trust his backhand enough. So he'll hit these inside out forehands that don't do a whole lot. And I'm like, you have a great backhand. Use it. But besides that, I mean, there are no weaknesses in his game. He kind of does everything.
Yeah.
And it takes most people at like until they're 25 or 30 and then they still don't have a game this well rounded. I mean, if you compare him to Berrettini, like firmly entrenched in the top 10, making major quarterfinals and semifinals, his game is better than Berrettini's.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, it's by a mile, and it's wild because Berrettini has been around for a while. He knows how things work, and it's like Alcaraz has better return, better touch, better defense, better backhand. Like
the only thing that
Berrettini
probably has better than Alcaraz is the serve, the slice, and the experience, which is going to catch up at some point.
Yeah, and the forehand I think is close enough that I don't even give Berrettini a solid edge.
No, I don't.
And all of this is why I was convinced Alcaraz was going to beat him at the Australian Open. And when he lost, I think I said to Bunch, if they play again next week, Alcaraz will win. So I was glad Alcaraz backed me up a little bit by beating him in Rio. I think it was Rio, right?
He was Rio.
He's so good. It's mind-boggling. Like I think he's going to be 6th in the world by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think which ranking you said?
He's at 20 now.
Okay, yeah, I think he's going to be a top 10. Imagine if I would be very, very happy if like Felix and Alcaraz qualified to the finals at the end of the year.
I think
which is going to be a really refreshing two faces in the finals, and I think they're going to be like so stoked to be there. They do just play very well, especially Alcaraz, to be fair.
I want to see him there so badly. I was saying last year, and this is rough on Casper Ruud, I know that, and on Nori, who both had great years. But when I saw the field, I think I tweeted like I would genuinely be more interested in seeing how Alcaraz does against these people than either of them. Like ranking notwithstanding.
Yeah. No, I think Alcaraz, like the two things that I find can be refined in his game is like one, the shot selection, that sometimes you said like he doesn't trust his backhand, pulls the trigger a little too early, and I think spot serving could become a bit better. He can serve at 230k, like, which is ridiculous. Is very powerful, but we know that power doesn't always win. Like Djokovic has proven that against Isner. time and time again.
This is the placement era.
So like you need to place your serve really well. And what I was watching sometimes, like in the matches, like Alcaraz is so explosive, and he's so excited about like his explosion that he sometimes just like hits time and time again down the line, and he expects a win. You can tell 100% that he's expecting that his roar is gonna turn into a winner at the end of that shot, and the ball comes back, and then sometimes he just looks very tired, and you're like, man, you could have just hit a cross-court forehand just as hard, and he was probably gonna be a winner there, or you're gonna get a short ball right after. It's just like it's probably just like the youthfulness, like he's a little too youthful at this time, like it's just too eager to win the points, and he knows it is good. He knows like he could probably do it, but if you keep going down the line time and time again, like you ought to, you're gonna, and also you're gonna give a lot of room for your opponent to like hit a safer shot on the cross court, which
Right.
could lead to you making an error. So
Yeah.
yeah, he's gonna learn that for sure. But like I think by
Yeah.
2023, we are definitely gonna see an Alcaraz that my bold prediction is that he could probably win a Grand Slam next year. I believe that he could.
I think I said that to Scott, and he
Yeah.
thought I was crazy. Yeah,
No,
I agree with you.
I
I could see him
believe
winning
you.
the U.S. Open in 2023.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that is not certain, I mean, besides injuries, which can affect anyone, is like, how is he going to handle like learning stuff? Because he is yet to experience that traumatic loss. Like, how is he going to handle that? Because right now, he's in. I think someone said this, so this is not an original phrase. I think someone said like he's in the honeymoon period of his career. Like right now, everything is great and every win is so nice, and like he's beating everyone, and he's just getting to know the tour. And like everything is great, but before long, he's gonna play, I don't know, Djokovic or Nadal in like a major quarterfinal, and he's gonna choke, and they're gonna beat him. And like, of course, he's gonna choke. Like, there's no getting around this. I mean, we remember what happened with Gaston in Paris last year, where he was up 5-0 and then just completely imploded. And that wasn't a big enough match to like fully hammer in the lesson. So it's gonna happen again. It's inevitable, and then we'll have to see how he handles it from there. But right now, it's like it seems like there's nothing in his way. He's just sprinting to the top. Like we talked about Felix having a steady improvement curve. This guy seems to be on like a steepening curve. And of course it'll stop at some point, but it's just crazy to watch. It's like every shot he hits is getting him closer to the top.
Yeah, I think it helps that he's growing in the rankings as well, because he has a very clear objective, right? He's just 20 in the world. Like, I mean, there's a lot of rankings that you can catch up on. The points difference is not that great, so that he can win a couple like 500s and 250s, and or just go deep in tournaments, and he would keep growing, like, and get to top 15, 11, 12, and then when he gets to the top 10, that's when the slow pace like occurs. Like that's when you just kind of like you take a year to jump like one spot. So like it's hard. Like that's when it gets to the point where it might feel that he's not going anywhere. And I guess like that's when a lot of players like Nadal are right in saying like I'm just gonna take this a week at a time. Because if you don't just focus on the tournament and what you're doing, if you just focus too much on like rapid progress, I feel like you can get frustrated because it's not going to happen. And I think the closest thing that he got to a frustrating loss was to Berrettini this year. But I also think that he wasn't necessarily expected to even take it like too far in this match. Like I feel like if you would say, oh yeah, like we would imagine that he would take it to 5, that he could even win this match. But like he was not necessarily a heavy favorite. Like people would still think that Berrettini would come through, which he did. But like I feel like a heavy loss for him would be like when he goes in and people are like, oh no, this is it. He actually is like on par with those guys, and he should be winning this match, or he could be winning this match. It's like at some point he should be in his racket. And when this happens, that's when a crushing loss can occur, like Tsitsipas against Wawrinka.
Oh,
so that was a massive.
That was a crazy match. That I need to rewatch that because that was one of the best matches of the last few years. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, and I think that Berrettini match as well. The facts that, I mean, I did expect him to win, but he wasn't like an overwhelming favorite, like you said. And I think the fact that he went down 2 sets kind of kills any pain that could have come up from that. Like even though he came back and it was really close in the end, it was like he was down 2 sets. Like at that point, there was like a 90% chance he was going to lose. He made that match way closer than it should have been. And so I think from that standpoint, it was almost a success for him because it was like looking back, the next time that, like from his perspective, I imagine it would be like the next time we play, I'm not going to play like crap for a set and a half. So I should win. And I just proved that I can beat him even when he plays well. Like I think Damien Cust was saying on Twitter, like even though Berrettini has the bigger serve, like when they play, he needs to rely on Alcaraz errors. Otherwise, like Alcaraz is going to win. I mean, and that's what happened. And like Alcaraz wasn't even good in the second set, and it didn't matter. Like I'm looking at the ATP rankings right now, and the people above him are I'm going to read from 19 up. Basilashvili, Opelka, Carreño Busta, Fritz, Batista Agut, Shapovalov, Schwartzman, Nori, Hurkacz, Sinner, Auger-Aliassime, Rude, Rublev, Berrettini, Nadal, Tsitsipas, Zverev, Medvedev, Djokovic.
Mhm.
And I feel like until you get to 7 or 8, it's like Alcaraz is better than all those guys. It seems like a matter of time until he passes most of them. And like you said, I think things will get way tougher at top 10 and top 5, but I think he's going to keep climbing for a little bit.
And honestly, I think we were robbed from a showdown between Felix and Alcaraz in the US Open last year.
Yeah, that would have been fun.
Yeah, so I'm really excited if they, partly on the reasons why I think they should be in the ATP finals this year and probably in the same group, is because we need to watch a match that matters between those two, like the quarterfinals of the US Open, which should have happened. So yeah, I feel like, yeah, I kind of agree with you that, like, I feel like it could be easily like 7-6 in the world, maybe 8, maybe not 6, but like 7-8 right now. And honestly, Opelka, Fritz, he's better than all these guys.
Yeah,
he returns extremely well. He serves pretty good and can improve. And yeah, like his backhand, Berrettini could only dream of having something like that. Sadly for him, I wonder what is going to happen to him. And luckily for him, though, like the grass season is very short, but I feel like he still needs to pick up something in the grass season. I think I would still give the edge to Berrettini if they were to play on grass.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, I'm like, I feel like he can look at the grass season as just an opportunity. Like you said, it's a small part of the calendar, but he can look at it and go like, okay, it's a small bit, not a lot of pressure because I'm better on the other surfaces. And also most of the ATP sucks on grass. So if I can just get a little bit better, I can steal Wimbledon in the next few years. I mean, there are things that would surprise me more. But yeah, I mean, looking at that top 20, I'm like, 3 of those guys know how to play on grass, maybe. Yeah. Like, I mean, Djokovic, Nadal, but like maybe Medvedev, maybe, but and then Berrettini.
Yeah.
Like, I think Zverev is not great on grass. Tsitsipas is kind of abysmal. Rublev and Ruud, I imagine, would be fine, but probably not going to do a whole lot. Auger-Aliassime could be good. Hurkacz, I think, could be good, but not good enough to contend for a title. And then like none of the names besides that look too imposing. I mean, Wimbledon is going to be like the disaster major for the ATP in the next few years. And so yeah, I mean, I wonder if he could put in like a solid training block on grass and just figure out how to move on it and return on it, like, yeah, he could win a Wimbledon. So.
Yeah, I think in particular, like if the draw gets like easy, like not easy, but like favorable, like if suppose he stays number 2019 until Wimbledon, he could potentially face like a top guy like as early as third round or fourth. So he could be tough, but like if the draw opens up like it did last year and like he's not in Djokovic's half, I think he could very well just get practice and like just get into grind zone with those guys who don't really know how to play on grass either, and just like, okay, let's see who adapts better in this match. So like he can get like the match practice that he needs and moving on grass and match situation. And I don't know, by the end of like first week, he could say like, okay, I think this is good training. Like if I go another 2 matches or 1 from here, that's amazing. Like I came here to just practice and I'm leaving at Wimbledon like with like maybe a quarterfinal. Who knows? Like I feel like it could happen, and it could give him a great
result. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, so I want to ask you now, like if Djokovic can't play, who the hell is going to win Wimbledon on the men's side? Very good question. Like, because I mean, the field has been bad on grass for a while now. You'll like this fun fact. In 2019, do you want to guess who the 5th favorite was?
The 5th favorite, wasn't it Felix?
It was Felix.
Yeah.
Who had like 0 wins at majors at that point or something crazy like that. He lost in the 3rd round to Ugo Humbert. He was the 5th favorite. But like, yeah, who was going to win? Like if Rafa's legs can take it, presumably he would then be the favorite, but that's not a sure thing. But like who was going to win Wimbledon? There's not a safe bet in here at all.
Yeah, I mean, you could even make a case, and that is horrible, but at that point, like even Isner could fancy his chances
Oh
at
God,
Wimbledon.
no,
Like,
I'm not.
yeah,
I can't agree with that.
I don't want to say this, but like it's supposed that like a 2020 horror situation happens for Djokovic again, like in which he can't play. Well,
No.
he could play in 2020 in the U.S. Open, but he messed up and he ended up out in the fourth round. So at that point, and even last year, um, players are feeling like, oh my gosh, this could be my chance. Like if Djokovic goes out early, who knows? Like it's anyone's game.
But Isner, man,
Yeah,
look, I'm
yeah,
writing a piece right now saying that Wimbledon is overrated. But if John Isner wins Wimbledon, I will swear off the event entirely. Like you
yeah,
cannot, you
100%.
cannot put this in my head.
But I think I would definitely give the edge to either Nadal or Berrettini. I think Berrettini would even look at it and say like, the guy who beat me last year is not here.
Right.
I can definitely do this time.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Unless he gets Nadal in the final, because at that point, his game is going to be just as good as Federer's and a little bit worse because he doesn't move as well. He's going to have to rely on slices, which Nadal's going to kill him for. So
yeah. I mean, I feel like that could be a fun matchup on grass though, because Berrettini would get more mileage out of his serve. I really think he missed an opportunity at the Australian Open because he was really bad for the first two sets. Like Nadal did not have to do anything out of the ordinary for like 2 hours, and then it actually got close at the end. And maybe if Berrettini hadn't spotted Nadal 2 sets, he could have won that match. So if he comes out of the gates firing, I would be intrigued as to what would happen there. I feel like Tsitsipas has got to improve on grass because he's world number 4. But on fast hard courts and on grass, he is not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Which is not great.
Yeah, like I think Tsitsipas like remains in the same issue that like his return on the backhand side is particularly is just really poor. Like it can't remain that way. Like literally every player when they play him, they serve to his backhand like 100% of the time. Like it's not even a question of like he's not even guessing at this point. He just knows it's gonna go there, and like you know that. Like when I was watching a couple matches of him in Rotterdam, and against I think it was Gaston as well, like in Marseille. Tsitsipas' returns were not particularly amazing, like on the backhand side. Like in Gaston being a lefty, kept putting the balls like just sliding to his Tsitsipas' backhand, and when Tsitsipas tried to return something that was not his slice, he just kind of floated a little bit and just didn't really have much direction, and was high and landed mostly like on the service line on the and a player that like has a good forehand, has good confidence, is gonna see that ball and just like, I'm just gonna do 1+ serve and it's gonna work because this ball is just gonna sit up for me to just blast a winner back to his backhand or something. And yeah, if you give time to the backhand of Tsitsipas, he can do something. But like how many players are just willing to like, I'm just gonna give him some time. Like he deserves to play a little bit better. Not at all, right?
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. I mean, he's great on clay. Like he's gonna do amazing things on clay because he has time to load up, and then his ball becomes super heavy. But when he's rushed, it is bad. And that's not an easy problem to fix. It's kind of like that Rublev thing where it's like the problem is very obvious. But that's almost a bad thing because it's been clear for a couple of years and nothing has really changed. And so I don't think there's a lot of reason to think that it will change going forward. I mean, these guys are young, but again, like the problem is obvious. Like I don't know that more years of knowing what the problem is going to fix anything. Like maybe it gets marginally better, but I don't think there's ever going to be a world in which Tsitsipas is a good returner or can hit good backhand returns. And that's a big issue. It's not great.
Yeah, I think and if we stop thinking about like how great the big three is, like there were a bunch of players back in the day who were great in one surface or two, and they were able to maximize that to the fact that they were able to even win Grand Slams. And the player that comes to my head right now is Gustavo Kirten, who there were rumors that he was going to coach Tsitsipas. Didn't happen. It's probably never going to happen, by the way. But I think Tsitsipas doesn't necessarily even have to worry about the grass season not being his great suit. Like you could probably say like, hey, listen, I'm just never going to do well on this. Like I might as well just try to become really good on hard courts as well, which was what Kirten did back in his days. He became really good on hard courts as well. I think he won a Masters on hard court as well. I'm not quite sure, but he did win the Master Series, which is the ATP Finals, beating Sampras and Agassi, both a little bit older at that time, but he still did them back to back. So I feel like Tsitsipas could get better on hard courts and just say like, hey, listen, I just suck on grass anyway, so like I'm just gonna be freaking amazing on clay, and I'm gonna be very much decent on hard court. And by the time that he's 26, like Djokovic and Nadal are probably going to be out of the game. Federer 100% is going to be out of the game.
Don't jinx it, Andre.
Yeah. And at that point he could become number one by just sheer fact that nobody is like Djokovic and Nadal and Federer.
Right.
So.
I mean, yeah, honestly, if he or like Shapo or someone else who doesn't have a chance of winning Wimbledon just decided to skip it altogether, I would fully support that.
Yeah.
Because like if you think about it really, what is the point? I mean, you know, like money, if you're ranked low enough, like money, ranking points, but like what is the point of playing this tournament on this extremely niche surface that you know you're not going to win? I mean, obviously they'll tell themselves that they can win, but it's not going to happen. Like if, again, to pull up the rankings, like Casper Ruud is not winning Wimbledon. Like why should he even play? Like, is there much point in him going to the fourth round or the quarters and then losing when he could be training on the hard courts, which make up like 500% more of the calendar? I don't know. I think there's a great argument to be made to just skip it entirely at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how much would they have to pay in the fines, but I think if you're a top 4 player, like getting sponsored by Rolex, you could probably pay that off. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel like at the same time, like all these players that are so competitive that just kind of always have the question in their minds, like, what if, like, it's like, suppose like one day, like everybody loses in the first round, like whatever, or the third round, like every seeded player is the only one left. It's like, oh my gosh, like this is my time to shine. And probably a lot of those players just think that they like to play Wimbledon for whatever reason, and it pays a lot of money to be there.
And the fact that it's so historic and has all this tradition counts a lot for everyone. Like this is the one that everyone dreamed of winning when they were younger, you know, back when grass was more of a thing. And like, to be clear, I don't think that anyone is actually going to do this. I'm just saying that if you wanted to be really tactical, skipping it could be a good move. Kind of like, I mean, Medvedev, now that he's gone deep at the French Open, I don't feel this way anymore. But like, if before last year's clay season, he said, like, I'm not going to do well on clay, I know that, I'm just going to train on grass and then make a run at Wimbledon, and be like, yeah, man, go for it. Like you didn't win a match on clay in like the last 3 years. And I'm exaggerating, but not by much. Like what's the point? Like, I get it. Go work at something that you have a realistic chance of having major success on. And yeah, I mean, and I do wonder if we're going to see a shift now with these players. Like when they grow up, are they still going to dream of winning Wimbledon? Because it's really not what it used to be. It used to be the culmination of all this great talent. And to an extent it still is, because it's a major. And on the women's side, the field is better. You have more players who can play on grass. But on the men's side, it's like nowadays you have a handful of players who know how to play on grass. No one else has any idea what they're doing, and the competition is not that high quality. Like, is that still something that children are going to dream of winning? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's just, especially after last year, the quality was really not that high. It was by far the most uninspiring major of the year. So like, and it's of course like the reason why is because players just don't play on grass. Like it's just the reason why. Like,
there are no opportunities. I mean,
you either play on clay or on hard. Like that's it.
Yeah,
and if you're intelligent, you put your kids in a clay court, because like that's how you learn how to play tennis without having to just rely on like big serve and a big forehand.
Yeah, you learn how to move and hit ground strokes. I mean, grass is such an impractical surface to play on. And the fact that it's lasted this long is kind of crazy. I mean, on Wimbledon last year, like I do think the women's side was very good. Like I'm on record as saying Kerber Sorribes Tormo was the best match of the year, and then the semis were great as well. Like you had I think it was Sabalenka and Pliskova. That was really good, like super close. And then Kerber wasn't that close, but it was really good quality. And so like the women's side, you had a lot of very good matches. Like it was a fun tournament. Like excited to see that again this year. But on the men's side, like, oh my god. I mean, that you had that Djokovic Shapo semi, which was decent.
Yeah.
And that was about it, really. I mean, that Berrettini Hurkacz semifinal was dire. I'm sorry. You had Berrettini won like 10 games in a row at one point, and it got close by the end, but it was really hard to watch. It was like, this is not what a Wimbledon semifinal should look like.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, here I'm gonna pull up the draw because I want to see how the seeds did.
Yeah, and you go on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, there was no doubt in anyone's mind from the start of that tournament that Djokovic would win, because there was no one who had the capabilities to beat him, besides Medvedev maybe, and he lost in the fourth round. Yeah, so here we go. Quarterfinalists: Djokovic, number 1; Fusovic, unseeded; Khachanov, 25; Shapovalov, 10; Berrettini, 7; Auger-Aliassime, 16; Federer, 6, but on one leg; and Hurkacz, 14. I mean, that is not a strong top 8. I'm sorry.
No, it is not, because the one thing that we're missing, and it was plain to see in the 2010s and for most of the last decade, was that it seemed like players knew how to play on grass. I don't know what happened, that they just don't know anymore. And we had like nice setups, like, you know, at the end you could say like, this match is most likely going to happen in the quarters. This match is most likely going to happen. And now we just look at it, it's like, we don't even know who the finalist is going to be. Like,
right.
Like, we have no clue, like, if this player can do well. And it's not even the fact that, like, we could say, like, for example, for the WTA, it's like, I have no idea who the finalist is going to be because everyone is so good. It's like, I have no idea who the finalist is going to be because I can't
Everyone is terrible.
Yeah, it's like, who's going to play well enough to beat each other? It's like players are not necessarily winning their matches. It's another player is just losing it first. You know what I mean? It's like,
yes.
It's like, it's a finalist at Wimbledon or a quarterfinalist or semifinalist almost could say, I basically have no right to be here. That makes me better than anyone else that I've come through before. It's like, it could have been literally anyone. It was almost like a coin toss.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking back because, like, I'm really intrigued to know what caused this shift as well, because I do think this is where kind of the aging out of the lost gen has had an impact, because Dimitrov, Del Potro, Berdych were all in Wimbledon semis at one point or another. Berdych made a final. Ferrer was in a quarterfinal, I think 1 or 2 years. So like, those guys had a better idea of what they were doing. And the fact that they're gone now means that you have fewer consistent presences in the late rounds of Wimbledon.
Yeah.
But like, what's changed? Like, if because people still play warm-up tournaments, right? Like, Djokovic and Nadal don't anymore, but everyone else should be.
I think you hit on the question here that is probably the right thing, is because I actually don't think that lots of players are playing warm-ups. They just decided, it's like, if it works for Djokovic, it should work for me, or something like that.
That's the worst thing you can.
I know. It's like, you should probably be playing as much as you can on a surface, and I think that they should definitely be going to Queens and to Halle and to
100%
and to whatever Eastbourne. I think it's actually Nuremberg right now. It's like, just
play
go
Eastbourne for sure. Yeah,
go there and play it. Like, at some point, Queens used to be the draws that you see like at Queens as a 250 were ridiculous. 2008, the year that Nadal won Wimbledon for the first time, he beat Djokovic in one of the best matches of the year at a 250. Why? Because those players are willing to just go there and just be like, I'm gonna play this event.
Yeah.
And the best players in the world are saying, I'm going to play this event as well. And it was a packed draw. It was always packed. Halle was a little bit less. Federer, I think he hadn't beaten a top 10 player before the quarterfinals in 10 years that he won the tournament.
Yeah, he's mopped up there. But like, it doesn't matter. Like, go to Halle and just like learn how it feels to play on grass. I mean, and another thing, like, this would not be so much of a problem if we had more good returners on the ATP. Yeah. Like, since basically the entire top section of the WTA are great at returning. All they have to figure out is how to move. But with the guys, can't return, and you have to learn how to move. And the returning is like, you are not going to learn how to return on grass in 1 year if you're not already a good returner. I think this is going to be the dark ages at Wimbledon for the ATP. I think it's going to last a while as well. Like, I mean, like, you have Berrettini, who knows what he's doing on grass, but like, do we see him as like a 5-time Wimbledon champion? Like, because I don't see it.
I could see him, like, if things get really dire, I think he could win it twice. But then I don't really know if he could even do it once, to be perfectly honest. Like, things need to still fall in place for him to take that title. And if Medvedev figures out how to play at Wimbledon, because I don't think he does, because at the same time he likes hard courts because the ball bounces high and because it's fast. He doesn't like clay courts because the ball bounces high, but it's very slow.
Right.
And he doesn't like Wimbledon because the ball bounces low, but it's really fast. So it's just, he just has I don't want to say he's a one-dimensional guy because he isn't, but he's a little stubborn about like taking the time to like learn different surfaces. And I think he did a super job last year doing well at Roland Garros, because he should do well in clay course tournaments, because he's a great defender. He has a big serve. Maybe he can improve a little on how aggressive he hits his shots, but he has a massive backhand, which is he's good on both sides. So it should be good enough for him to do well on clay for real.
Right. I mean, in a way though, he is one-dimensional. It's just that the dimension, like the surface that suits his dimension, takes up like 70% of the tour.
That's probably true.
So you don't really notice it that much. I mean, makes me feel bad for. I mean, and look, like it's, if you are only going to get good on one surface, it should be hard court. So full credit to Medvedev for mastering those, because it's infinitely more productive than mastering grass or clay. But it makes me feel bad a little bit for the players who specialize on those surfaces, because every time they play grass court specialist, clay court specialist, and you never hear hard court specialist because there are so many hard courts. And you know, like I see the logic behind it and everything, but I mean, like Casper Ruud has gotten so much hate for being the best on clay. And he's decent on hard court, whereas you have Medvedev great on hard court, decent on clay, and you never hear specialist with him.
But to be perfectly honest, like Medvedev is better on hard than Ruud is good on clay.
Yes, but so like by all
yeah, but yeah, Ruud is the type of, I just don't watch a lot of Ruud. I just figure that he wins titles at times, but I don't even know. Like, and I think that's one of the cases as well. And I know you're probably running short on time, so like we can.
No, it's all good. I was going to go to something at 8:30, but I'm not going to anymore.
All right, sounds good.
So I'm all good now.
Yeah, but yeah, like Ruud, a guy like Ruud, I'm pretty sure that between 2000 and 2008, something like that, I don't think he would have been a top 10. Not with his game.
I don't think so either.
I think he would have been like 15. 16, top 15 at best, but like I don't think he would have been able to crack the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the WTA top 10, and it's so much more exciting than the ATP. Like you have from the top, you have Barty, Sabalenka, Krejcikova, Badosa, Pliskova, Sakkari, Kontaveit, Swiatek, Muguruza, and Jabeur. And any one of them I could see winning Wimbledon. Yeah. Like that, any one of them I could see winning a major.
A major, really.
Like I mean, it's like this is packed. Like there's not a weak link in here. I mean, Pliskova at 5, maybe she can be a little inconsistent, flat at times. Sabalenka struggling with her serve, but like all these players have the peak level requires to win a major. And then on the ATP side, you have I mean, you know, Zverev has his mental block. Tsitsipas, I think, not ready to win a major. Roland Garros, maybe if Nadal loses. Berrettini has gotten kind of close. And then you have Rublev, Ruud, Auger-Aliassime, Sinner, who are all still developing. Felix probably with the best chance among them, but it's like 5 of these people at least I can't see winning a major. It's so top heavy, and I think people are going to see, like, it was last year. It was bad having Djokovic being such an overwhelming favorite at Wimbledon. But I think people are going to see this year without him, it's going to be worse. Like I think not knowing who the favorite is only exciting when you have a lot of really good players in the mix. And if it's just like who can be the least bad. And look, I know I'm not being very nice to these players. These are some of the best players in the world. And tennis is really, really hard. But I don't know. I'm not excited to watch.
There's just something lacking. I feel like it just lacks a little bit of a spark. And I know I've been comparing it to the 2000s a lot, and I'm probably guilty of nostalgia, like the good old times are always better type of thing, which is not true. But at the same time, you just see with those guys, they just lack. I feel like sometimes the discipline to, do well, and sometimes just like the little spark that you just look at them and you're like, these guys, they don't fear the top ones. Like
Right.
it just looks like they do. Like it just looks like they come up against Djokovic defeated. It just looks like they come up against Nadal defeated, and if they start losing, they're just like, oh, it's just Nadal, like type of thing. Like
Yeah.
I don't think I would ever see like David Ferrer saying this, even though like in press conferences,
Oh,
it just kind of
he would though. He was exactly like that.
yeah, that's true. David Ferrer would do it. Like I feel like in match play, he never really showed that. Like he always like tried so hard to like beat those guys, a little too hard at times, and caused a few errors. And just like you could have done a little bit better than that, and you would have been like you're respecting way too much these guys. But like I feel like respecting is different than just kind of like, oh, it's fine. Like I feel like Tsitsipas got good like last year against the Djokovic. But I don't know, man. It's just
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Medvedev losing a 2-set to Lovely to Nadal at the Australian Open. I don't think it should happen. All credit to Nadal.
That should not happen.
All credit to Nadal. He just
agree.
won it. Like he played like a beast. Like at the end of this match, but Medvedev imploded a little bit and shouldn't have.
Yeah. He imploded a lot. But I mean, like again, Nadal is a legend. Like played well, adjusted. Like all credit to him. But when you look at it from the other side of things, Medvedev is 25. He had won a major. He has had years to develop. It's his favorite surface.
Yeah.
Like he knows the deal by now. He knows or should know how never to let that happen. And he did. I mean, it's not even so much any specific point where he let down. It's just like from 2 sets up and 2 sets to 1, like you should be able to navigate the ship to port, and he didn't. I mean, on Ferrer though, I do want to say like he has had press conferences where they're like, "What do you think you need to do differently?" And he's just said like nothing. Like they're better than me. I can't beat them.
I guess you're right in that one.
But like largely, I think with like people like Berdych and Tsonga, even if they didn't have the killer instincts, they at least had the level that could beat the big three sometimes. Like you knew when they stepped on court that there was a chance. And I think if, I don't know, Ruud or Rublev or Berrettini stepped on court against Djokovic in a major final, you would know there was not a chance. I mean, I think it's
just lacking the fact that like you looked at a lot of players and you say like this is a tricky one, and you're saying like this is a dangerous guy. Like Federer would never walk on a court with Tsonga and say like I'm just gonna win this match. Like there's no way. Federer knows that Tsonga doesn't have the best backhand in the world, but the guy moved so quickly, had a big serve, and lost to him a couple times, matches that he should have won. And Tsonga just did it. Like at Wimbledon, he came back from 2 sets to love down and beat Federer. He came back from a 5-1 lead.
I was hoping you would bring that up. That was
in Toronto, like he came back from 5-1 down in the 3rd set and beat Federer in the final to win. I think he's just 2nd ATP Masters 1000. And it's like those are wins that like I feel like they stop believing a little bit. Like the guys like nowadays, like one thing that Medvedev could have done better, maybe he just say like, you know what, you want to play a match, like let's do it. 40 rallies like every time. I'm just gonna put everything back. I don't even give a crap. Like I'm gonna take your legs. Like just like do like Djokovic that, like I'm just take the crap out of them and
I mean the weird thing is I feel like that was the plan initially, but then weirdly Nadal had more in the tank, and so he had to and then Medvedev didn't have a plan B. I mean, I actually think he should have deserted that strategy earlier, and as soon as he got tired been like, okay, I need to attack more. The problem was his forehand is not a point-ending shot, and he can't volley. And then you have a real problem because Nadal can do all those things. So, but
and he can pass.
Oh man, he's such a good passer. It's crazy. I mean, sometimes I look back on those like clips from 2012 or something. I'm like, some of the passing shots that he hit is wild. And like again, I should stress that like Djokovic and Nadal, even at this age, are still. They're still a level above. Like they're so good. But I think the facts that I like the pace at which the next gen have been getting closer when they've been getting closer at all, I think is worrying. It's happening very slowly. And it happens.
I do think that like that could be good prospects coming like in the 20 and younger generations. I think it could be potentially really good in the future. Alcaraz leading all of them, of course, but Maybe this generation is just kind of the gatekeeper, like the last ones, like to try to do something against Djokovic and Nadal. And maybe in 5 years from now, we're actually going to see a next big thing, or maybe 2 years. Like if Alcaraz wins a Slam at 19-year-old.
So we have a lost gen version 2, is that what you're saying?
I think we
do.
I honestly think we're at lost gen number 3 at this point. But
right. Well, I mean, who was the second one after Nishikori, Dimitrov, Ferrer?
Because we basically had a lost gen at like the 2010s. Is this like the last gen that we're talking about, Nishikori and
yeah, that's the first one, and then
yeah.
If this is the third one, what would be the second one then?
I guess anyone that came with Team.
Oh yeah,
because Team is a little bit older.
Now.
Yeah,
that's another thing that bums me out, because Team was the guy for a little bit. He was. I mean, it took him a while to get there, but when he was at his peak, like he was one of the very few who believed. Like he took matches from Djokovic and Nadal, which no one else was doing. I mean, he at the U.S. Open in 2020, he beat Medvedev in straight sets on a hard court. He was so good, which is why every week he's out kind of breaks my heart a little more, because he was a guy like Alcaraz who like had the spark. Who like you were excited to watch because anything could happen. So I hope we get him back. I mean, I don't know. I think the WTA is definitely the more explosive, exciting tour right now. I mean, and we've just talked about the ATP for ages. But I mean, like looking at these rankings, Ostapenko, who just beat like 4 major champions in the same week, she's number 13. Like there are 12 players above her in the rankings. It's amazing. Like Raducanu, 12th. Like Collins, 11th. Like there's so much talent here. It's ridiculous. And I think another thing I want to write is like, I want to know how much of this comes down to best of 3 versus best of 5. Because if the woman could play best of 5, things would be very different. And people would not be criticizing the top WTA players for being inconsistent. Because the reality is it is way harder, like way less consistent to win best of 3 tournaments, because if your opponent gets hot for an hour, you can lose like that. So
and plus, like if you fall down even like a 2-1 lead, like it's hard like to come back from that. Like still, like it doesn't have to be like a 2-0 lead, which is almost like it did happen a couple of times as Australian Open in the later rounds, which is not something that we see every day in a major. But I mean, even if you were like 2-1, it's hard. Like it still takes a lot out of you to like win the next 2 sets when you've been out there for like already 2 hours and a half. So
it is hard, but I think the difference for me is less about that and more about the mindset. Because in best of 3, you can go in and aim for the lines, and if it works, you win. But in best of 5, like it's too long. Like you can't peak for 3 sets. Like there will be a lull, which is why you never see anyone blow Djokovic or Nadal off the court, because like you can do it for a set, but then you revert to the mean, or they start playing better. It's too long. Like you can't. It's a marathon, so you can't sprint to the finish line. And I think because players know that, they don't try. And they go in playing more at their neutral level, and then they get destroyed by the top players because the neutral level is better. But in best of 3, you can go in with a crazy game plan or a really aggressive mindset, and you can sustain that for 2 sets on your best day. And I think the other thing is on the WTA, besides Serena, who hasn't played in a little bit, you don't have GOAT level players at the top. But I do think that that's probably less of a factor than the format, to be honest.
Yeah, because I think the difference between the WTA is that like we don't have GOAT level players, but it's more they're more consistently high than at the ATP. Whereas like in the ATP, you have like a great GOAT level players, and then we have players who are very far away from that. So like for example, Barty, it may be not GOAT level, but she's really good, and a lot of players out there are really good too. And in a very subjective comparison, because that doesn't really exist, I feel like everyone in the top 10 is better than the top 10 in the ATP, except for Djokovic and Nadal. Like if they were, yeah,
and maybe Medvedev.
yeah,
I would agree with that. Yeah,
yeah.
like on average, the level in the WTA top 10 is higher.
Yeah,
for sure.
I was just watching the highlights between Sakari and Kontaveit, and of course, again, it's highlights. It doesn't give the full picture. Yeah. But I kept trying to imagine, because Sakari has a dreadful record in semifinals, and she has, I think, only won one title. Yeah. And I was figuring, like, is there something that she's doing wrong? And I don't think she did anything wrong in that match. It's just like Kontaveit just like played incredibly well, and it just came down to a couple points here and there, and that's how she lost. But yeah, like I feel like when it gets to that point, what are you gonna do? Like, what can you improve? You have to really sit down and improve on minor details here and there. It's like, what could I have done in that point that could have got me a little bit ahead in that score at that time, and you try to do that next time. It's not necessarily like you pick a Medvedev and it's like, okay, you need to start learning to volley right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's you have so many players on the WTA who are kind of just technically perfect. Like like serve well enough, return really well, forehand great, backhand great. Like you have so many players like that. I mean, is there in the top 10, is there a player who has like a weak side? I mean, Barty doesn't have a great topspin backhand, but she protects it so well with the slice. Yeah. And I feel like everyone else up here kind of does really well off both sides. Like, I mean, you have players like Sabalenka who can spray errors, but they have like that Ostapenko type easy power, where they can also blast winners. So I feel like it's very different from having a bad backhand. Yeah. I mean,
I guess I would only say probably Swiatek needs to improve on her serve, but that's the weakest shot. Right. I would say probably in the top 10.
I mean, I think a few of them could improve their serves, but I mean, like from the ground, they're all so good. And then and in the ATP, you can easily pick out like bad sides. I mean, you have Tsiitsipas's backhand, Berrettini's backhand, Rublev's backhand, even, and just these glaring issues. Yeah, and second serve, or like they can't return. Not like they're not great at returning; they are bad at returning. And you have nothing like that in the WTA. I mean, you were talking about Sakari. I'm really excited to see how she does this year, because I feel like her only problem is maybe nerves, like when the finish line gets close, because she does everything well. Like, she's maybe the fittest on tour. Great serve, like no issues from the back of the court. I feel like, I mean, and this was another thing where you saw the best of 3 versus best of 5 thing at the US Open. She made the semifinals. She was in great form. Of the top 4, probably the favorite at that point to win the title. And then she goes in the semis against Raducanu, who peaks for an hour and it's over. Like, that's it. Like, you're out. And that would not happen in best of 5.
And
like,
I think I fully agree with you on that, especially because you take Raducanu, and she did really well, like 6-love, 6-4. At that point, Sakari started playing a little bit better. She was at least like trying to stay in this match. Like, she had another shot and another set. Maybe she could have turned that match around. And maybe Raducanu would have like lowered her level a little bit, because that would have been another set that she needed to reset and go back on court and do well. And at some point, like, the streak would have to be over. So I guess you could say if Sakari had played better in the first set, this could have been a different match. But she didn't, and that completely gave away, like, to Raducanu to just keep doing what she was doing and finishing the match early.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like little things that make the difference as well. Like, if you're down a set in best of 5, the second set, in the literal sense of it, is not a must-win set, right? So you can play with a little bit less pressure, especially if you're more experienced and seated higher and fitter. But in best of 3, you have to win. So, like, it's scary, you know? You're not serving to stay in the set, you're serving to stay in the match. So maybe you make more errors and that sort of thing. Like, I mean, players will just play differently when there's a different finish line. I think that was something Ben Rothenberg said a while ago, like when I first got on Twitter, and it annoyed me at the time. But like, I think since then I've kind of come to see, like, it's right. You know, best of 5 matches are just different from best of 3. Like, players pace themselves. And it's upsetting that there's this divide, because that has its origins in a bunch of men deciding that women were not capable of playing best of five, like a long time ago. That is obviously not the case. Like they could play best of five. So yeah, I mean, it just creates these very different dynamics.
Yeah. And they already did, right? In a time that, like back in the 80s and early 90s, I think that's when they did like less like the WTA finals used to be played. Like the final was a best of five for like a couple of years. And now players are so much fitter. There would definitely be able to, they play 3-hour matches all the time.
Yeah, so, I mean, like they're super fit. I mean, like and the difference makes no sense. Like women run marathons. Like
yes,
like they don't do 20 miles instead of the marathon. Like there's no reason for this. I mean, I think from the player's perspective, I would understand being annoyed if you were just told Roland Garros is going to be all best of five, because that's a big difference. And that's a difference you have to prepare for. So I think if it were to change, that change would have to be handled, gradually or tactfully. But like in general, the notion that they would be incapable of it is insane. And yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to see it. I think the best switch would be for both tours, first 3 rounds best of 3, last 4 rounds best of 5. And that way, like, scheduling is not an issue. You get long matches between the best players. But in the early rounds, you also have it so that you can have upsets, because Djokovic and Nadal are not ever losing in the first. I can
only imagine. I think if they ever start trials, I think it's going to be in the final round, because it's on different days. So I think the scheduling makes it a lot easier for them to do it.
Right.
So I think if we're going to see something in a Grand Slam to change, I think it's going to be a 5-setter in the final of a Grand Slam. I'm not sure if this is the ideal scenario, because you already play 6 matches in over 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden you're playing like this 5-set match. Is pretty disconcerting, I guess, like difficult to adjust to that, I would say. But it could be the option that they look at first, which I would already be up for, because I think it would work, not ideally, but it would be at least a trial, and we will at least see it happen.
I mean, that makes sense with the scheduling. I mean, I think if the option were like presented to the players and they voted and decided they didn't want to do it, like I would be fine with that. For sure. But I'd like them to at least have the option, because I think Juan Jose, when we had him on for the US Open, said the women are being like deprived of this format, and I totally agree with that. Like I think it's very different to be a top player and know that you can be displaced by the world number 100 in an hour. And if you're a top player on the men's side, that's a very different, increased type of security.
Yeah, especially because the number 100 is probably going to cramp by the end of the second set. Anyways,
yeah, exactly. So. That's another thing, is like physically, like it takes a lot more development on for best of 5, which is why you get these 18-year-olds. Like, I mean, not Alcaraz, because he's a freak of nature, but do you remember that first rounder between Djokovic and Rune at the US Open?
Yeah, that was the one that came to my mind.
Rune was cramping at 1-1 in the third set, like an hour and a half into that match. Like, I mean, when that happens, literally 0% chance of winning. Like if you can't get through 2 hours of tennis without cramping, you will not win. It's impossible. If you're playing best of 5. So like, again, that's another difference. Like, I mean, someone like Sakari, who's as fit as it gets, is not going to be fully rewarded for her physicality. Like, if that match against Raducanu was maybe his best of 5, maybe she ends up running her into the ground. Maybe Raducanu doesn't have the gas to close that out. So, and I'm not trying to take anything away from what Raducanu did at the US Open, because it was absolutely insane.
It's what it is right now. So she did. She did. According to the format, this is it. So
it was. I mean, like there's no other path available. But I do think if that tournament were best of 5, it would look very different.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of Raducanu, I guess like just to transition from this massive, how could I say, high level tennis conversation, but going back to the weekly thing, what do you think Raducanu's performance is going to be this week?
Sorry, I'm just gonna look up where she's playing. I've not been.
She's in
Guadalajara.
Doha.
Okay.
Wait, no, yeah, Guadalajara top seed. I think the number
playing
2. Yeah,
Gavrilova.
yeah,
I really don't know, to be honest. I mean,
yeah.
I think it wouldn't surprise me if she did well, but I think more likely she'll probably lose before the final.
Mhm.
I think she really still lacks experience. Like there's not a problem with her game really, or at all. It's amazing, perfect when it's on, but she's still so young and has still played so few matches that it's going to take a lot of time before she'll be ready to be a tournament in, tournament out contender, I think. And that's not criticism at all. Like it's really hard. Like I mean, I think pretty much everyone recognized at the time that the US Open was kind of this anomaly, and it was like glorious and amazing and fantastic, but it was still an anomaly. So yeah, I think probably she'll lose before the final. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking she could either, again, like we never know with Raducanu, but I think we're getting more and more certain that it's not going to be a blowout like the US Open anymore. So I think that she could lose by the semis or quarterfinals. Did you check the draw? Does she have a bye in the first round?
I don't think so.
Okay, so yeah,
it's a 32 person.
Yeah, exactly. So a quarterfinal would be two matches.
Yeah.
So a quarterfinal would be 2 matches. If she can win 2 matches and make a quarterfinals, I think it's already good progress. She hasn't really won many back-to-back matches in a while. So I think if she makes a semifinal, then that's pretty solid.
Yeah. I'm just looking at this draw, and we have Sorribes Tormo is playing. First time since Australian Open.
Wow.
I was waiting for this.
I think she's defending champion, by the way.
That's right. Yeah, because she beat Bouchard. That was the first match of hers I ever saw part of. And I only saw the end, so I didn't really grasp her style or anything. I'm so excited to see how she does this year, by the way. I think she's ranked 32nd. I mean, which is great. I mean, and unlike a lot of players at the top of the WTA, she does not have the peak level that can beat anyone. But she's so steady. I can't wait to watch her play again. So much.
I think I am really excited to see. I wish Sorribes Tormo gets a rematch against Raducanu. I feel like she's gonna be stoked to play her again in a tournament that she's defending champion at. So
that would be great. I hope those two play. I mean, Sorribes Tormo was the 3rd seed, and I don't have the draw, so it would either have to be semis or final. I'll cross my fingers for that. I mean, Sorribes Tormo and Kostyuk at the Australian Open was a really fun match because they were just playing like 30 shot rallies. I remember on set point in the first set, they played a 29 shot rally that Kostyuk won with a winner, I think. And then she just kind of like put her racket on the court and leaned on it, and then her other hand was on her leg, and she looked like some Greek statue or something, like a warrior. It was insane tennis, and I was gutted that Sorribes Tormo lost because I wanted to watch like her play a bunch of matches. But it was really, really fun.
Yeah, Sorribes Tormo is an interesting player in that. I feel like it would be scary to be against her. It's like, oh god, like what if she's like peak defending level? It's gonna take forever to win this match.
Exactly.
Point even.
Like that's always what I think the mindset is playing her. Like it's, you fear her, but it's a different kind of fear. It's not that you think you can't win the match. It's just like, this is going to be a long day at the office. You know what I mean? Or like that stack of forms that you have to fill out every year, and it takes forever. And it's exhausting. I mean, she's one of the most unique players on tour because she has almost no firepower, no serve, but returns crazy well, defends crazy well, and hits with a lot of topspin. And she can do it forever because she's a machine. I mean, it's like soccer level of fitness or better, probably. Like she's one of the only players who's actually like weaponized physicality. Like she wants to make every match attritional. Like if Murray still had physicality like that, then what he plays like now would make more sense. Sorry to the Murray Musings people possibly listening to this. But yeah, I mean, and so that makes the clash of styles so much fun because whoever she plays against needs to try to hit through her because they're not going to be able to trade moon balls with her. Like that's a losing proposition. So it's like, can they focus, the power, and last physically. And it's so much fun when it's close.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I guess we covered a lot of ground though, like today, right? Like we would talk Alcaraz and Felix
Right.
and
Ranting about Wimbledon.
and the ATP after all. Yeah,
The
it's a very classic tennis and bagels episode. We could just be sitting at a cafe having a nice meal and just chatting about tennis forever. So
yeah, hopefully we can do this in person at like the National Bank Open at some point.
Yeah, that'll be pretty sweet actually. So
yeah,
stay tuned for that. Maybe that's gonna happen soon.
yeah, who knows? Yeah, I mean, there are some matches that I'm excited for. I mean,
yeah,
like if Sorribes Tormo is playing, I will watch, or if Alcaraz is playing, I will watch. But like, I don't know. I mean, between right after a major, I'm not super excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for Monte Carlo.
Yeah, man, me too. I mean, like again, I'm just not feeling it with the Sunshine Double. Like I don't.
Yeah. I think it's partially one because Indian Wells basically just happened, and two, Miami was disastrous last year.
Yeah, that was bad. I mean, WTA was great because that was my real intro to Sorribes Tormo because she played this insane match against Andreescu. That was like the Andreescu Renaissance as well because she beat Muguruza in a really tough match. And
he was
in a really tough match. And I feel like she had another one on top of that. And Sakari saving 6 match points against Pegula. And then Barty beating everyone because that's what Barty does.
Yeah, and Andreescu beat Sakari as well in that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was like multiple tie breaks or something.
Yeah.
This was back when people were debating whether Barty was the rightful number one. I remember arguing with people about that. But yeah, I remember on the ACP it was bad. I watched the final between Sinner and Hurkacz, and that was one of the worst tennis matches I've ever seen. I was taking notes and I was just like, after a while, I was like, I can't do this. Like this is I have nothing to work with here.
Yeah. We should do a podcast especially to discuss which match was worse, if it was Monte Carlo final last year or if it was Miami final.
Monte Carlo was bad. I think I even live blogged Monte Carlo because I thought it might be good. And that was a bad experience. Rublev never had a break point.
Rublev never had a chance. Like he was just not there in that final.
That was tragic. I remember the first game he actually played really well, and Tsitsipas was serving and it went to deuce, and then after that it was never that good again.
Yeah, pretty sad.
Yeah. I mean the clay season last year was really fun though.
Yeah,
all things considered. At the breakout of Krejcikova.
Oh yeah.
That Krejcikova Sakari's final or semifinal at Roland Garros was really good. 9-7 in the third.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see final set going the distance again. Like it's a rare commodity these days, so
yeah,
like a 12-10 final,
right? And one that's not 24-26. John Isner.
It doesn't have to go that far.
Yeah, I mean, at least now if Isner wins Wimbledon, it's not going to be like 30-28 in the 5th set of the final.
Hey everyone, so me and Owen just kept chatting for a long time, and by the time that we closed the call and we went on with our lives, we never said goodbye. So here I am in editing time saying this goodbye because otherwise you would just feel like there's something wrong or that I got the episode wrong. No, there's nothing wrong. We just completely forgot about it. It was a good tennis chat, so it just ended. So yeah, goodbye. See you next time.